Профессор, вам сложно будет поверить. Меня прислали к вам из будущего, которое наступит через 50 лет.
Playing the character more than once, does he in any way influence you as a person, as an actor, professionally, personally?
One never quite knows what impact a character can have on one's own life. That's a question that really should be asked to an actor or an actress's wife or husband, or in my case, my children, who are now very grown up, and one of them is an actor. And they would say, oh, yes, a great influence. When he was doing this role, he would be like this. When he was doing the other one, and so forth. 5 years ago here, I concluded a year-long run of playing Macbeth in Shakespeare's tragedy. And it's lucky that I was living alone then, because I would not have been livable with during that time. The role itself affected me so strongly. And but Charles Xavier is an admirable individual. He's thoughtful and caring and compassionate. And if anything, any of those qualities rubbed off, then I think that's something to be grateful for.
The fun for me professionally is getting to take a character that audiences have seen in 6 or 7 other movies, and flip their perception of him on its head. He's incredibly different to how we've ever seen him before. He's in a very surprising state of mind and body, actually. And so getting to give the audience something new with that character was a privilege.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Thank you for coming. With this weapon, there will be no human collateral damage. If I turn it on, the system couldn't even activate in here.
What is that?
I just sort of read the script and sort of gleaned from what Simon had written and made it my own in terms of this guy's sort of ambitions and belief system. I think he's a very interesting man, and he's very smart. And it's funny because what he's proposing is what people do every day. They sort of propose a war, but because your own people are being, going to be wiped out. So it's sort of self-protection. Unfortunately, he's a bit of a war profiteer at the same time, because he's also going to profit from all of this.
I think there's something about Charles where he's almost like he's royalty, and there's something about, you get working class people, middle class people, upper class people, then the aristocracy. And there's always that thing in Great Britain, which is sort of a class-defined culture, or has been arguably until more recent times, where working class people are the ones that are pushed down, and middle class people and upper class people, they're just not worth talking to. They don't know how to talk to working class people. But you actually go above them to the aristocracy, to the royals, and they can talk to everyone. They can actually get on with everybody. People say it about Prince Charles quite a lot as well, like how he's just like, he can have a chat with anybody. And there's something about Charles Xavier that I think is a little bit aristocratic in that way, where it's like, you can kind of connect with people, you know what I mean?
The great strength of the X-Men movies is that they do not depend on special effects to work. They're essentially character and narrative driven.
Yeah, that's what makes them so real.
What is going to happen next? What will become of these people we've become so fond of? And that's what keeps people in the seat, or turning the page, or not flipping channels.
Do you communicate with Patrick just to not
No.
necessarily?
It was always important for me to portray the character very differently. For the reason that I just said, I suppose, like, you don't want it to be just the same every time. The idea is definitely, though, that at some point in my career playing Charles Xavier, I will end up playing him a little more in line with Patrick Stewart's portrayal of him as well, because he does have to get there at some point. But no, we didn't really talk. I did, however, think that in his portrayal of Charles Xavier, there's like empathy pouring out of him, which is the most important part of that character, I think. And for me, it was really important to key into that and hopefully have that same kind of energy in terms of empathy kind of coming out of me. And that was the thing I took away from Patrick.
You think this movie helps us to learn something really, or it's just
Boy, I hope so.
entertainment?
I hope so, but it doesn't seem. It doesn't ever seem to work, does it? There we find some new form of intolerance to, I don't know, invest our energy into, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, as long as we keep trying to make the world a more tolerant place, you can't ever give up the fight, no matter if it's a big blockbuster movie or.
I want to believe.
Yeah, me too.
Growing up, comic books didn't really seem to be available to me or those around me, or not my neighbourhood anyway. It wasn't a thing. So no, there was.
So you grew up in the literature, the books.
No, I didn't really read when I was growing up.
What you were doing?
I was watching TV and I was playing football and I was doing
what
those
I
things.
thought.
But I read a little bit growing up, but I didn't read a lot, and I certainly didn't read comic books because we just didn't have them. What did I get into? How did I get into X-Men? Cartoons. Every Saturday morning we had the X-Men cartoons, and that was something that was what got me into it. But if you'd have asked me back then, hey, do you think you'll ever play Professor Charles Xavier at some point? I wouldn't have believed you.
What would be your favorite era in a timeline that you would like to visit?
Well, a couple of years ago, I spent a lot of time with my wife in the Yucatan in Mexico, in southeastern Mexico. And the culture and civilization there was at one time so advanced and so brilliant, when the rest of us, you know, in the so-called civilized West was still, the West, or at least Europe, were hopelessly inadequate. And we often said, you know, wouldn't it be marvelous to stand on the top of one of these pyramids 1,500 years ago and see what it felt like and what one could witness?
Well, it'd be great to go back, way back, for maybe just like a few hours, because you might get eaten. But when the big, you know, like the dinosaurs, and when this world was truly wild before people even existed, like how amazing this world must have been back then. Obviously, I believe in evolution, not creationism, but just how lush and verdant before we came along and started polluting it up. But what an incredible place this must have been.
Get into the mind of dinosaur and look everything from above.
Oh yeah, one of the flying ones though, because I also want to fly.
Yeah, wonderful.
Biblical. Jesus times. That would be amazing just to see what actually went down.
Gosh, I hope they wouldn't get you on the cross there.
Wow.